Association Europe 2021. While we wish we were in person, we're going to still be virtual this time, but that does not make the content any less exciting. Today, I'm Jonathan Malone McGrew with Solimar. It's our 30th anniversary in business, and we're excited to bring to you today 2 standards, 1 goal, modernizing print communication production. And what that really means is found a little deeper in our description. We love this idea of Pdf plus Jdf equals ADF, and we think you should explore the possibilities in modernizing with automation, PDF features, and JDF JMF capabilities. So bringing 2 standards together to really, well, we think conquer the print and communications world. And with me to discuss this today in this great educational forum is our Chief Experience Officer, Marianne Rowan. So you see her there, and I can look at her and say hi. And then below me, you will see Pat McGrew, industry analyst, expert in all things print and digital. You may have known her from her work around the PDF Association. Pat, what standards do you at McGrew Group work on with the PDF group?
So right now, working with the PDF Association, I'm part of the committee that is working on the PDFET application notes for version 2. We're actually creating 2 application notes for the new standard. We're creating one voiced for designers, trying to bring them in earlier in the process. And then we're also creating a more technical application note. And then I'm also working with the team on document part metadata. And that means that you have to define a set of tags and a semantic hierarchy and develop the library for people to refer to. So I'm working on that as well.
That's awesome. And we do these intros so that you know who's on talking about this. PDF is near and dear to our heart. Marianne, we've been working on PDF. How long has it been now?
Really since 2000. We were early adopters of PDF and really trying to make that optimized for our customers, and we just continue to do that for many, many years. And so it's we follow the standards, we promote them, and we love to consult with Pat and others to really learn and bring that to our customers and certainly our customer advisory council.
Well, and that's a really good point. So PDF's really becoming important. Can you tell us a little bit about why we see this as so important, this message about standardizing and using standards in your production facility? Is that something we're encountering through our customer advisory council and our customer work?
Definitely. I mean, a big topic. We're on lots of our monthly communications with we call them our CAC, and we love to talk about PDF optimization. Combining that with JDF standards that we'll be talking about today really leads to automation. And some of the big benefits, of course, are rapid onboarding. Being able to bring on new customers, new work, and even new employees in a templatized, manageable way, where things are actually documented and, again, standard. And so whole environments will run better, leading to really the ADF, or the automated document factory, that we'll be talking about.
Which is so great. And I know we have something special coming up that we'll talk about here that everyone's going to get to engage with. But Pat, tell us from your perspective. I mean, we love having your insight because we work in transactional and direct mail and a little bit in commercial print, and it can expand out from there into some industrial print. But you work with everybody and everything. So is PDF, is this just a niche that Solimar sees as important, or is it really a bigger global impact?
Remember that PDF was born out of the need to help advertising agencies move giant display advertising files around, right? PostScript files were just so massive. And, in the years of dial-up modems, it wasn't friendly to move those things around. And PDF was envisioned originally by Adobe as a way to do sort of a display PostScript thing. And what happened is, as often happens, their idea was seen by people outside of Adobe and said, oh my gosh, wait a minute. No, this is way more than that. This is something that everybody will want because more and more people on computers, more and more smart computing. This was in the 90s. and it became pretty clear that PDF could be something else. So what's happened over the last 30 years is, the first, call it 10 years, were the crawling stage. It was still trying to figure out what could you do, what couldn't you do. I worked on transformation products that took AFP and metacode into PDF, because at the time we didn't display AFP or metacode. So it was a solution that had, filled a gap for a while. And once we got to the end of the 90s and into the 2000s, and as Solimar really started to jump onto the PDF bandwagon, the transaction space did, the direct mail space did, the commercial space did. But in the last 10 years, what's happened is PDF has gone through this big maturation one more time. So it's out of the awkward teenage years. It's now into sort of mature adulthood. And now we have it in textile, we have it in label and packaging. Fundamentally, any of the print stream environments where graphically rich material is being transmitted to a print head or a CTP device or a toner, platen, it's probably PDF at this point. Digital textile, home decor, right? The digital printing of home decor. An awful lot of this is in PDF. And the same thing with, your direct to t-shirt printers that you can pick up pretty inexpensively now. To do that consistently and to create color consistency and ensure that the design will be produced consistently, PDFs get you where you need to be and makes it easy to make a file that's transportable across a whole lot of different locations, but also a lot of different devices.
And I think that's so important, because will be sharing with you this really great interview that Pat did with our president, Drew Sprague, here at Solimar, who is a huge PDF fan, but he's also a JMF fan. And for those of you who aren't really familiar with what that is, don't worry, we're gonna let Drew and Pat explain in their interview. But the key to it really is that there's these multiple standards that are making things accessible and allowing you to leverage things like automation is such a big topic right now. Managing your labor so that you're using people for the right things and using automation and technology to move the business forward. So Pat, are you seeing the JDF JMF conversation as well as PDF out in these other areas that you were talking about?
JDF, it's you almost feel sad for the standard, because it was built with such great intentions and it has had such a long ramp trying to get into the marketplace, because everyone decided that they knew how to implement it and different implementations behave different ways. So I think we're getting closer to JDF and JMF communication tools becoming more interoperable, right? There are big interop meetings now that are attempting to test the ability to take different JDF implementations and make sure that they can communicate and share data in their formats. It's it's still growing in other areas. If you think about it, it's really transaction, workflow automation and transaction, workflow automation in direct mail, workflow automation in digital commercial print, book publishing. These are areas where JDF, JMF protocols have really started to really sink in and mature. In LNP, you get it in large environments that need to be able to direct to multiple devices and feed dashboard information. Digital corrugated printing is another place where you're starting to see it grow. And you start to see that in multi-format commercial shops, where they might be printing on digital signage, they might be printing on cloth for digital signage, they might be doing bolts of fabric for a couture house, as well as direct mail and maybe a magazine or two. JDF helps them manage all of that. And that is why I think it took all of these things coming together to make it desirable to spend the time to do the JDF implementation.
Well, I think with that, we really should, I mean, the conversation you had with Drew is going to be
It's
so
great.
interesting because you guys talk about what PDF is, what JDF is, the automated document factory, but more than that, you talk about why it's important and is it really moving the needle, and why did PDF win the war? Like, why is PDF being adopted so much? So let's cut on over to Drew and Pat and take a listen.
Hey, I'm Pat McGrew, McGrew Group, Managing Director, and I'm here with one of my favorite technology people, Drew Sprague. Drew, as the guy leading the charge at Solimar Systems, you have a lot of secrets. And one of the things we thought would be really interesting would be to start to sort of peel the layers of the onion back around those Solimar secrets. And especially because you're one of the leaders in PDF technology, and you've built that expertise around JDF, and you've been helping customers for coming up on 30 years. We thought that it would be fun to have a series of conversations around what all this really means. And you said something in a conversation not very long ago, that PDF, right, portable document format, plus JDF, the job description format, equals ADF, so automated document factory. And that intrigued the heck out of me. I mean, it sounds like it's so easy, such an easy formula. Who couldn't have thought of that before? But I'd never seen it put together that way. What does that really mean to people?
Well, hi, Pat. It's so nice to see you again. I think we were having a little bit of fun just trying to seem smarter than we are.
Oh.
But in reality, there's a lot of substance behind that little formula of PDF plus JDF equals ADF. For a long time, people have been building out little elements of automated document factories. And for good reason, because there's a lot of need for visibility and transparency and efficiency. And with all the disruption and change going on, it's obvious that it's important for organizations to become really optimized when it comes to output management and managing, for example, the risks that go along with that. So the PDF part probably is a little obvious to people now about why PDF is important, because it really is. It's used everywhere that page-centric document of record information is needed.
Yeah,
and
trillions of pages are stored in PDF format, right?
Yeah, crazy. And it's made everyone's lives really so much more efficient. I mean, we're probably surprised at how much work we can get done in a day now, because we've become basically receptacles for all this electronic information feed.
Yeah.
The JDF part is interesting because, well, frankly, a couple of years ago, when we started down this road, maybe it was more like 4 or 5 years ago, we thought we were getting a little bit out over our skis, because JDF had the reputation of being, well, really difficult and really kind of vendor specific.
Built by geeks for geeks.
Sorry?
Built by geeks for geeks.
Yeah,
in the print space, right?
That's right. And finding a implementation that worked well and reliably was pretty hard to do. And so we recognized, though, that JDF inevitably was going to become more influential because of the movement within the space, the technology movement, from legacy content formats, including job tickets, to more open standards. PDF being more open than a lot of the proprietary formats like XLCDS, DJDE, all that kind of stuff. And even PCL, which has its own kind of burden of having those built-in margin limitations. And so PDF, being the wide open container it is, really needed a complementary data exchange vehicle, a job ticketing format and information exchange vehicle, so that people could leverage some of the benefits they were finding from other models like IPDS to implement really a more holistic view of their shop floor, and not just send information, but gather information back, know what the statuses are, be able to collect information on consumable usage so they can bill accurately and bill timely, which are really big problems for in-plants. And so that's kind of the direction we headed. We figured, well, we got PDF angle picked off pretty well. Let's start building JDF, even if we're a little bit ahead of our skis. And it's turned out that it's been a good strategy.
The really interesting thing is, PDF is such a, we think of it as being very well defined and well understood. I'm not sure that's true because there are so many variations, and it seems like everything that emits PDF does it slightly differently, which just adds to the excitement of dealing with PDF as a file format. But JDF is one of those things that almost felt like it was built in the back room behind closed doors by a bunch of people who had the best of intentions, but didn't necessarily have that view of how are normal people going to use this in order to make their life in output management better. And the net of it is that JDF has actually been on a way shallower ramp to global acceptance and global implementation than I think we thought it was going to be back when things started.
Right. And I would agree. And one of the things that we've found in working with many of the DFE and printer vendors out there is that their implementations did have some minor flaws. And we've been able to help them work through some of those things. So we're really quite proud of that. But those issues were very small in nature, actually, and relatively quick to resolve. But I think overall, the lack of, for example, just an easy on-ramp to implement JDF has been a bit of an inhibitor for people, because even if the printer had it, finding an emitter that supported it, since there's not really a Windows driver that writes to
it's true. Yeah. And
JDF.
that's how everybody's used to working, right? That
That's
oh,
right.
well, we just download a Windows driver and magic will happen. And that's not what happens with JDF.
That's right. Yeah. And in fact, many of the implementations out there currently are a bit simplistic in that you can write a JDF file, which includes all the job ticketing information, post it to a folder, and then kind of in an asynchronous way, let the target device, typically a printer, know what you want it to do. And then whenever it gets to it, which can be quite delayed, get the feedback. Our implementation's quite a bit more sophisticated. We've implemented the JMF portion of that, which is the dynamic status messaging, basically handshaking, so that you know what's going on actively with the device at any moment.
So that's the secret sauce that actually finishes out that equation of PDF plus JDF equals ADF, right? Because if all you're doing is throwing a file into a hot folder, you're not really an automated document factory.
Well, that's right. The JMF is a really important part of that whole component to make it dynamic. So once you do that, then you know what's going on with the device, and you can use the current state of the JDF file, which is effectively a recording system for the transaction, to find out what's going on now, and post that information in a live manner, so that you improve your visibility, people know what's going on, and errors can be dealt with, all that kind of fun stuff.
All right, so if I am looking at where we go from here, why is PDF, why did PDF win the battle? Why is PDF so important to all of these workflows that we create?
Yeah, well, you know, the Achilles heel of all the legacy data streams is that they're really not good viewable formats. And once Reader became free, it really let the genie out of the bottle. And PDF started to dominate, first in the office space. People started sharing information, documentation, whatever, in PDF. And it wasn't long before people stopped printing manuals, because they didn't have to. They could just post a PDF. But I think beyond that, what makes PDF the winner is that it does such a good job with color. It has a whole lot of features that are designed for electronic workflows. A lot of people like to use PDF in collaborative workflows, those requiring proofs and approvals, review processes. It just is light. Organizationally, can store a whole lot of information in a little tiny container when you've got a PDF file.
So 10 years ago, when we were still struggling with massive PDF workflows, maybe a little bit longer, maybe 15 years ago, one of the talk tracks among the old legacy cheerleaders was, yeah, but PDF is editable and PDF isn't secure, and PDF can, it doesn't have all the same characteristics that a legacy enterprise workflow has. But that's all changed, hasn't it?
Well, of course, none of those legacy data streams are secure.
No, they like to think they were, but they really weren't.
That's right. So now the PDF 2.0 introduced some significant improvements in the encryption capabilities. Now the challenge there is, of course, people have to adopt and use PDF 2.0 to take advantage of those. But mostly it's anecdotal information about the risks that people are presented with when using PDFs. If you don't embed content in them that isn't just presentation information, you're really not exposed.
Makes sense. But how does the versioning really work in PDF? So if I'm using one of the common document composition tools or something that the guys in the back room cobbled together to execute to produce PDF, I'm assuming that that PDF emitter has to know what the standard level is that it's trying to meet. So do I, as somebody who's sitting in an enterprise or a commercial print shop, do I have to go bug my document composition people and the designers and ask them, hey, are you PDF 2.0? Am I secure?
No, typically you don't. What's amazing about PDF is that even some of the very oldest versions of PDF provide amazing functionality for people to build documents around. Over time, a lot of nice features have been added onto the car. It's got a really nice stereo system and not just the basics, but even some of the very oldest PDF versions can accomplish quite a bit. So we don't find that the PDF version is particularly critical, except for when you want to use some of the very newest features, because obviously encryption technologies improve over time. And there are some other benefits that are very targeted in the benefits that they convey. For example, one of the reasons that JDF is really useful is that it allows people to set up finishing information for the printer. PDF has its own internal format that can be used for that. It's called document part metadata. Not all RIP vendors take advantage of the built-in capabilities to process document part metadata that often a PDF RIP has. And so to take advantage of that, you of course need to move to a newer version of PDF that supports document part metadata, or use JDF if your printer supports that. But generally, the only, and it's rare that it happens, there are some applications out there that people have that ingest PDF that are, for whatever reason, sensitive to the PDF version that is fed to them. That doesn't happen too often.
And not just a RIP, but it might actually be some sort of bespoke
Archive
presentation system, an archive system, right?
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's right.
Okay, so PDF it's become the lingua franca of the communication space, not just the print space, but omni-channel delivery.
Well, for page-centric workflow, obviously HTML5 for anything responsive,
right?
Because we all love our phones.
We do. Although, and I've read PDF on my phone, but ideally, it can get a little interesting to keep making it bigger and bigger. It's a little trickier. One of my favorite topics is automated document factories, and it goes back to the 90s when we were first talking about them, and the requirement, I think, was well understood that the more you could automate and the more you could normalize the process of moving documents through each process, the more efficient you would be, the less likely you were to lose documents, make mistakes. But a lot of the the technology wasn't there yet, even when we were trying to claim it was. So if you're sitting here today and you're looking out across the landscape, when somebody uses the term automated document factory, what are we trying to say? What is it that is that makes it an automated document factory? It can't just be that you have some PDF files and you have some JDF files. There must be more to it than that.
Well, that's right. It's a matter of tracking and knowing the details of those objects and being able to present the information on the state of those objects automatically to interested parties, which could be just the operations people, might be the actual consumer of that information. But it goes, I think, quite a bit beyond that, in that the automated document factory involves quite a bit more now than it did, say, 20 years ago, because the problem set that people were trying to solve back then was more of a point-to-point kind of workflow. And now the output management space and the customer communication space is really driven by multiple needs for repurposing and use of that document. And that's one of the reasons PDF is so useful, because it's both a really good print format, but also an electronic delivery format. And
that's
then,
a really good point, though, because I think when we started talking automated document factories, we assumed it was print, right? We assumed that what we were trying to do was print output management. But today, almost every Solimar customer I've ever met is actually doing multi-channel delivery. So their document factory has to be a whole lot smarter than it had to be when it only, I mean, say it only worried about print pretty complex in itself. But when you're also trying to deliver out through email and to websites and maybe even to apps and through MMS and SMS, that factory has to be really smart.
Yeah, well, and you know, a lot of the initial automation was taking stuff that had to be pre-printed and eliminating that. And the automation was, okay, let's get rid of all the real estate and pre-printing and all that kind of stuff and just go to a white paper workflow.
Right.
And so that's been an important part of the ADF story that PDF has been able to fulfill, moving people from those legacy content streams into much more efficient workflows where you're not having to deal with all the different kinds of paper, but also upgrading everyone's presentation capabilities by the use of color inkjet. Obviously, it's really been quite amazing, the transition there. But there's still a lot of room for individual organizations to evolve their document factories. Many of them still rely on antiquated models for tracking information, setting it up, and managing it through.
You hit the nail on the head. They do suffer quite a bit. I want to touch back, though. You made a really interesting comment, because you said, you know, inkjet brought a lot of capability, and certainly the cost model of inkjet, color inkjet, you know, opened up the door to a lot of that preprint replacement, and but it also introduced some complexity to the workflows. So what's the Solamar secret to smart workflows?
Well, there may be a few secrets there, but I think one of the things that you're well aware of is that there's a confluence of workflows, that some that have been variable in nature and some that have been more static in nature, you know, commercial print. And people with these devices are finding that they can converge opportunities. And that's where the power of JDF and PDF plays together really importantly, because both are well positioned to deal with either transactional data or more traditional static kinds of data. And
do I have to throw my whole workflow out to get to a smart workflow that is sort of an ADF?
Well, no, of course you don't. But you'll find that as you move to this environment, the stuff that's expensive to maintain, you won't have to maintain. So you'll become much more efficient. You'll be able to take on new business. A lot of organizations struggle to bring on business because of the amount of work they have to do to maintain or onboard into the systems that they have. And so as you migrate to these PDF-centric and JDF-centric workflows, your ability to onboard new revenue streams as well as reduce your costs in managing them grows dramatically. And we have case studies out there that talk about this very issue.
And that sounds like a really amazing Solimar secret right there.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here, we'll get you guys, get your cameras up and we'll get to question time.
Thank you, Duff. It's coming up now. Hopefully you can see me okay.
Yep.
Hi, Jeff. I'm on as well.
Hey there, yes you are. And let's get
There's Pat.
there.
Hello.
Excellent. Okay, so let's see here. Let me get to the questions. I'm gonna drop back to that screen. And let's see, what do we have in the question pod? So first thing I should mention is that some of the slides or most of the or all of the slides that were presented today are available in the download pod there, in the handouts pod. Okay, there was a question of PDF 2.0 and the DPM part of the specification to leverage PDF plus JDF. Do you have to be PDF 2.0 compliant for that?
Well, so Pat, my understanding, and so I'm marketing, so don't let me steer people wrong, but my understanding is you don't have to be, but you work with the standards. I mean, and you talk to Drew, and you work with customers all over the world. How do you tell people, you know, from your perspective? And I think
so. The first thing I would tell you is no, you don't have to be PDF 2.0 to create a PDF plus JDF ADF. You can do this with prior versions of PDF because people do it today, right? You have customers who do it today. I have clients who do it today. They do it today. One of the advantages that PDF 2.0 and the expansion of the capabilities of document part metadata bring is that now we can add smart meta tagging to the environment that allows PDF to interplay in a, what I'll call in a smarter way. It allows you to create more automation that reaches deeper into your environment. So if you've got the right semantic hierarchy with your document part metadata, one of the things that you can do is make it play well with your PIM, with your product information system, with your content management system, with your digital asset management system, right? And today, people make that work, but they make it work sort of by adding some middleware, right? And with the advent and with the expansion of the capabilities of DPM, we can automate more and more of that. And over, will it work brilliantly tomorrow? No, but think about what happens when you start to add those tags in, and over the course of a year and 18 months and 2 years, you get more and more automation to your document factory.
And I think if I just add to that, Duff, everything, I agree with everything Pat's saying. I mean, I kind of have to. I come from her background, but also just working with Solimar for so long, what we tell people is there's no reason not to start today. No reason not to ask your vendors, ask your hardware providers, ask your finishing equipment providers what they handle, so that you can start to build your way to the future. Because we've just seen over the last 18 to 24 months, all of the changes have really driven need to be able to control things and understand things better, even when you're not next to the device, because you can't take printers home typically, or finishing equipment.
So that's a good segue actually into the next question, which is, how do you know if you can leverage PDF plus JDF with current print and finishing equipment?
Marianne,
Well,
you've had a lot of experience with this.
Yeah, well, certainly we're installed in many of our partners' demo centers and test centers. And we started this journey several years ago, as Pat and Drew mentioned. The first one we actually worked with was Screen in the Equios. And so out in Japan, set all that up. And what's great about the Equios, and now we do other server front ends as well, is we can get information off of every job, every device, ink and media usage, all in nice reporting. Then at Hunkler, if you happen to have gone there a few years ago, we had a big screen that had one session showing live print output in Japanese and one in English. And then we had a Japanese version and an English version of the workflow. But yes, that was just our first one. But now we do this with lots and lots of partners, so we test quite a bit, again, in demo centers and test centers.
And I think, Jonathan, the other thing I would add to that is, remember that in order to really participate fully in an ADF, the physical devices have to be capable of feeding data back. So in some environments, you may have invested in a great new print device, but your finishing devices may be a little older, whether it's inserters or perfers or cutters or whatever it is you have, book binders, booklet binders. So a lot of those devices, that's where you need to have the conversation with your vendor to find out what information it can feed back and how it can participate in providing information to your dashboards and into your workflow automation environment, because it may be there and just hidden, or it may not be there at all. And don't worry, if it's not there at all and you really are committed to keeping your current finishing device, there are ways to add sensors to your legacy finishing devices that will feed data back. So have those conversations with your vendors. And if all else fails, have your conversation, come back to Marianne and Jonathan, because there are ways to make it happen.
And I would just add to it real quick that make sure it's part of all your DR, your disaster recovery, your backup environments. So what people tend to forget is most shops today have multi-levels of devices and software and people knowledge.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do is, still Pat's thing, you want to walk your workflows, you want to document, but what you want to know is which things don't do what you want them to do. So maybe those are the target of your upgrades and when your things are coming up for lease, or when you're looking at switching out equipment. Maybe you'll target the older stuff first so that you can get to a more common capability across your environments, because you might have one facility, you might have 10. It just depends on your business.
Great. So next question I have here is, if the standards that you've been referring to aren't new, well, I guess PDF 2.0 came out in 2017, but leaving that aside, because the rest of them are not, why is this subject, PDF plus JDF, why is it particularly topical today and not so much in the past?
Oh, that sounds like a perfect Pat question.
Exactly.
Here's the problem. It was always topical. I mean, Duff, you might remember, we were having these conversations 15 years ago. We were having these conversations, 20 years ago. The challenge was that a lot of the infrastructure wasn't there yet. It was actually hard to do when we first had the concept. One of the things that's happened, especially in the last 5 to 6 years, is that you've seen more and more vendors add JDF capabilities and data communication and data interchange capabilities to the hardware devices. And the workflow solution sets have gotten smarter about being able to read in, analyze, and provide quality information back, quality analytics back. So it took the perfect storm, right? We had to build all the little islands of capability and then finally bring it together into a brave new continent. And I think that's finally where we are. So over the last few years, we've had the capability to exchange data across vendors. Right today, most dashboards can speak to multiple vendors and bring all that information together. Most finishing devices can communicate into a variety of different workflow capabilities using the proper grammar of JDF that's needed for the given environment. So it just took time to get easy to do. And so for the early adopters, thank you. God bless every one of you who actually, carried those spears and got it working 10 and 15 years ago so that we could learn what needed to be made easier. And today, thank you to all the vendors who make it easier and continue to do the R&D to make it easier every day. My goal, workflow is an easy button.